Good. Hello, everybody. My it's like these weird. I don't even know what to describe it. I've been trying. I've been trying to figure this out now for a year and a half. Like, what actually is this when when you talk into a computer screen? I mean, it's just it's a strange experience. You know, I have come to the yoga farm pretty regularly for probably 10 years, and I really appreciate the whatever it is, the energy or the sincerity or the just the like the vibe of being there. I mean, until the coronavirus, probably 3-4 times a year, I would go there pretty regularly. And now marginally adjusted to speaking to people into a computer screen. And now, the world is starting to open up a little bit. I gave a talk yesterday. A few of you were there on selflessness, and I was trying to think of what can I say about selflessness that would be somewhat honest, because you want to be really careful with these spiritual qualities that you don't talk way beyond your capabilities, and you don't make any pretension that this stuff is easily accessible. Now, these are long practices with incremental result. And you have to have a deep trust or faith in something, or a despair about something to do real spiritual practice. Because what you're doing at some point is a little bit pulling away from the traditional methods of self-satisfaction, self-aggrandizement, gain. And you're starting to say a little bit that just benefiting the self may not be enough. May not make me happy, and may not be the best contribution that I can make to this world. And that's something, even to think like that is something. That you're willing to make small sacrifices to not just profit and prosper and grow yourself, but to recognize that self may not always be the best thing to pay attention to. Yesterday I talked a bit about the really famous experiment on the Good Samaritan, and that's just a biblical parable where there's a guy walking down the road away from Jerusalem, and he's accosted and beaten and left, I think, on the side of the road. And then two groups of observant Jews, two people representing two different groups, pass by without helping him. One is a priest, and one is a Levite. And they're well schooled in the Jewish law, and they're well schooled in the what's right and what's wrong. And both of them just Just pass by. Don't try to help him at all. And then there's a third person walking by who's a Samaritan. And at that point in time, the Samaritans were pretty strong enemies of the Jews. Like they were competing for the same people, and they had, ages-old arguments. So they wouldn't be considered like allies. And so a Samaritan is walking down the road and sees the Jewish person hurt and picks him up, binds his wounds, carries him on a donkey or whatever to an inn, and then gives money to the innkeeper to help this person recover, and promises that when he next comes back, he'll pay whatever costs there was to take care of the Jew. And the Good Samaritan idea has been around because of that simple parable. That when Jesus was asked, his responses was, well, the way that the Samaritan acted, that's how you should behave. Like that's your duty. But the really striking thing is not just that the two people who would have been thought of as likely to help didn't, but that someone who was in conflict did help. That long-standing, maybe not enemies, but long-standing mistrust was put aside. And he saw somebody suffering and helped him. But even more than that, was generous and took that extra step to make sure the Jewish person was okay. So there's been all sorts of commentary on this parable for centuries. And the commentary that most struck me was the one by Martin Luther King. Like his commentary on this, people forget that he was like a minister, he preached like a minister preached and was a deeply religious man. But his commentary was the problem with the Levite and the priest, what they thought of themselves. And the goodness of the Samaritan was he thought of the injured Jew. And that most of our bad decisions come when we overthink ourselves. And we're of greater use in this world when we are able to think of what others need, not just what we need. So the priest or the Levite, they might have said to themselves, this will be expensive, or this will be difficult, or this will be dangerous, or maybe the guy will die, or whatever. So I'm just the parable has the two of them walking to the other side of the road. Maybe I'll just make believe that nobody's here, and I'll just go on my business, because they were thinking of themselves, what's best for me. And Martin Luther King said, I was thinking, the Samaritan was thinking of what was best for the injured person. Now, what's so remarkable about this is this was one of the last writings that Martin Luther King did before he was killed. Because he was in Memphis in 1968, and this was related to him asking himself, there's a garbage strike here in Memphis, and I know I could be hurt, and I know it could be dangerous. But my question is not just what's best for me, but what will help the garbage people. And so he knowingly put himself in danger because he asked a different question. And there's something very profound about that. That's at the heart of the aspiration of selflessness. The questions change. We're really used to our questions of selfishness. How do I benefit me? What's best for me? How do I get the most out of this? How do I prosper? How do I get money? How do I benefit? It's like, look at Facebook or LinkedIn these days, and you read, like you could read thousands of people telling you about what's best for them. Here's what good news happened to me. Here's what positive thing happened to me. Here's how I prospered. Here's how I got ahead. Here's me, blah, 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 blah. But what the deepest thinkers on these questions say is you really want to change the question. Not just what do I need, but what does the world need from me? And that will give you very different answers. What does the world need from me? Or how can I help? You know, one of the reasons, at least my understanding, when I read about like spiritual takes on intimate partnership or very close relationships, is they're designed to give us practice opportunities for asking different questions. Like instead of the normal question, which is how do I benefit? And how do I maximize my time and space and life and everything? We choose to partner with somebody to also ask, how do I help? How do I make sure that their life is okay? How do I aspire to at least treat one person through the golden rule? You know, it's almost impossible to even do that with one person. I mean, if you think about how self-absorbed we are, we can barely do that with one person. On a planet of 7.5 billion, we can barely treat one person using the golden rule, you know, whichever way you flip it. Either, you know, don't do to them what you don't want to have done to you, or do to them what you want to have done to you. But that's at the heart of like spiritual marriage, spiritual partnership, spiritual relationship, is how do I use this opportunity to try to transcend myself a little bit? Because the world, it's too, I mean, certainly from people of the consciousness that I have and the people that I know, the world's too big. You know, it's too much. But maybe I can find one or two people to really practice selflessness with. Profound selflessness. Like a sense that their lives really matter, not just mine. You know, I remember I was a beginning therapist probably 30 years ago. And I had a client, a woman who was really struggling in her marriage. and she comes in, I don't know what the hell I'm doing then. I mean, I was new at the game and terrible at it. I mean, it was just like, well, you know, my biggest question was, why are you asking me? It's like, how the hell would I know? but, but for whatever reason, she sat down. Probably because the counseling center that I was working for charged $2 a session. So at $2 a session, how much can you lose? Even if you get a complete, idiot. So you wasted $2. The one client that I actually fell asleep on because they were so boring, they were somebody, I don't think they even got their $2 worth. But at least everybody else got the $2 worth. But I remember this woman, she sat down and she started to tell me about how hard it was in her marriage because she had 2 children and she loved those children, just loved them. But she didn't feel the same way about her husband. Like she said, when my children were born, I was just flooded with this desperate love and affection for them. I would do anything for them. But my husband's like, he's an okay guy, but I'm not doing anything for him. And she was trying to figure that out. Like, what part of love is choice, effort, behavior, and what part is feeling? The deepest theorists suggest that it's all those. That it's, you feel something, but even when you don't feel something, you act a certain way to demonstrate love. Because our practice of love with the people we know or the people we care for, that's our spiritual practice. And it's really hard work to be selfless, even with somebody you've pledged your life to. I remember again, I don't do much therapy now, but for years, I was a therapist. And I remember couples coming in to see me. And I'd see these people and they'd say, well, we've been married for 9 years and, we hate each other or whatever. One of them would sit down and say, I married a complete shit. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what I'm thinking. This is the one person in the whole universe you pledged to do your best to? How do you treat the people you didn't make that pledge to? Like, what do they get from you? Like, you just spit on them all the time? Like, this was your promise to do your best. And it's so hard to get past our self-absorption. It's so hard. So there are practices. I mean, there's service. There's like devotional yoga, dedicating it to God or whatever form you see it as. Service is a wonderful practice of, I'm here to help. How can I help? But there's something, I don't know how to put this, and this is in no way minimizing the monk or renunciant pathway. But there's something about being with people every single day. And I know I've known enough people in ashrams and places where there's a lot of interpersonal tension from being around the same people. But there's something about the practice that we get with the people closest to us to work on our selfishness if we want to. And I mean those last words really profoundly. If we want to. You don't have to. You never have to do anything. But if we want to, that's our practice opportunity. If you don't like people, get a dog, but something where every single day you have to show up all the time, whether you want to or not. You have to show up. These are some of the avenues of becoming a little less self-centered. Now, remember, I was giving a talk years ago. My work in the world is I direct something called the Stanford Forgiveness Project. And so part of forgiveness is like, don't take yourself quite so seriously. Like, you're not the center of the universe. Like, people do things, bad things happen. It's not always about you. Like sometimes people just misbehave. Sometimes they just don't, they just don't do the right thing. And it's not about you. So I had said that probably 50 times. It's not about you, blah, blah, blah. So one guy comes up to me after a talk and said, Fred, I'm going to tell you a joke. And the joke is, scientists have just figured out where the center of the universe is. And there's so many millions of people who are going to be pissed because it's not them. And that's our dilemma. That, honest to God, is our dilemma. We make believe we're the center of something. We make believe that this world revolves around us. It's a perceptual illusion. It's a product only of our mind. We can spend our entire life in that illusion. That we're the center and everything else takes place around us. It's only an artifact of our brain's processing of information. It has no objective reality. The whole world exists. We only have a perceptual place at the center, but there is no actual way that we are at the center. So we have a mechanism by which we are misinforming ourselves. And then we take that misinformation and we act on it all the time. And we fight people all the time about whose perception of being the center of the universe are we going to pay attention to? Is it going to be my perception of the center of the universe? Or is it going to be your perception of the center of the universe? And often we can end up in hatred around that. I mean, you think about, we've done work like in Northern Ireland with Catholics and Protestants who kill each other or did because of modest differences in their religious point of view. I sat in a room with, multiple people, each of whom was there because somebody had killed somebody in their immediate family. And they were Catholics and Protestants. And I'm sitting there thinking, there's something not right here about the human species. These are all Christians. Or you get Sunnis and Shiites in the Muslim world. Or you go anywhere, you get in the United States, red states versus blue states arguing about who's right, whose perception of reality, and they're all wrong. Whose is more wrong? You know, it's interesting, and there's some recent MRI studies that are showing two really interesting qualities. One is they're affirming how mindless we are, like how absolutely mindless, that that we don't actually see and experience the world, that very little of our processing has to do with our senses, and so much of our processing has to do with our interpretations, that we pay much less perception to what we see, touch, feel, experience. And most of our mental activity is memory and imagination and filling in details with our own stories. Absolute mindlessness, which affirms the need for some meditative skill in quieting down that part of our brain so that we have a chance for even a moment to see things a little more clearly. But the other one to me is even more phenomenal, that they looked at brain imaging and found that our default way of seeing the world is just too selfish and hostile. And it doesn't lead to accurate perceptions. Like, we misperceive things all the time because we find too much threat everywhere. That's our normal consciousness. And we make people wrong, we make ourselves wrong, and we're always looking for danger. And what these MRI things showed is that we don't see other people clearly. This is just remarkable, until we're at least at compassion towards them. Like, everything else is a distortion based on our own fear and our own threat needs, that we're overdoing threat and danger. That it's only when we rest in compassion that we finally quiet down enough to see things more clearly, to be able to say, yes, this is who this person is. This is who they are, not just who I'm projecting and afraid of. So, and let me just wrap a little of this up, and then we have a default network, biologically, neurologically, that organizes perception around the self and around fear and protection. And that network distorts reality to try to keep us safe. It tries really hard. We need practices to take us out of that. Yoga, meditation, prayer, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, generosity. Doesn't matter. I don't think it makes one bit of difference what the practice is. But you have to practice. That's the key thing. You have to work at it. You have to make it a mental patterning, because your default mental patternings are so ineffective, except at keeping you safe. They're not effective at keeping you connected or in relationship. But just being safe doesn't make us happy. And that's the endless conflict we have all the time. All the time. I have a lot of mental energy invested in safety. but I want to be happy. And I'm going to say the practices that yoga offers are designed to quiet the mind enough where you can perceive things in a way where you're actually more likely to be safe. You know, if you take a moment, well, why don't I just do this as a guided imagery to maybe wrap this up? I'd like everybody to just stop for a minute, and we're going to do a guided imagery practice. It's easier for me than just trying to talk. So if you just take a pause, stop, sit still where you are, and close your eyes and just take a moment. And just relax. Just relax. And remind yourself that at this moment, you're pretty safe. Pretty safe. And in fact, you're incredibly lucky to have a roof over your head, food available, running water. And so allow your body to relax into that safety. Just allow it to relax into that safety. And ultimately, you want slow, deep breathing, gentle, slow, deep breathing. And then just see if you can remember a time when you felt loved and safe. You want to bring to your mind's eye an image of a time when you knew that you were cared for, that you were supported, and you want to bring that image to mind so you can feel that memory, that experience of being held, protected, safe, whatever it is, loved. And then what I'd like you to do is just let that go. Let the image go, let the feeling go. And just take a breath and allow your eyes to open, but please don't fidget. Just open your eyes and sit still for a moment. And just recognize, if only for a moment, like when you have touched safety or connection, like you're more likely to be selfless. You'd be more likely to help somebody now. You'd be more patient. You'd listen more deeply to somebody else because you'd have stilled a little bit just that incessant inner voice of I have to be safe. I have to take care of me. It's like the endless self, 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 self. When it's soothed for a moment, you realize, wow, okay. It's in me waiting to be practiced. Just like everything else, it's a function of practice. That's the weird truth about our brain and nervous system. They're just habits waiting to happen. And that the more we practice something, the more likely it is that we will do it. And the less we practice something, the less likely it is that we will do it. And, sometimes when I've seen clients and they tell me how either miserable they are or whatever, and I think to myself, wow, this particular experience probably took 20 years of bad habits to create. And I've asked myself, how many bad decisions did they have to make to get where they are now? Like how many times did they make the wrong turn on what they paid attention to or what they focused on? And what we just forget is that maybe this is, there is some data that meditation's first effect is on the qualities where we feel frightened of other people's differences. So some of the earliest, like within 5 or 10 minutes, meditation makes it a little less likely for us to accentuate our differences and exaggerate the ways we're not like other people to protect ourselves. And so we feel safer. The more people are like us, the safer we are. Anyway, it's time for me, not quite to go to bed, but getting there. I thank you all for your attention. I really do like talking to people studying yoga. It's a very comfortable kind of energy for me. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening. So thank you.